All right. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Balls in Your Face Marketing. I'm your host, Julian Smit, and today I am joined by Erik Guilfoyle, also
Right.
known as Foyleman in the industry of gaming and gaming production. I've been excited for this, talk about gamification, because I got to tell you, I think this is the new big thing, I think, for marketing. Not that it hasn't been around for a while. Gamification has definitely been around, but I don't think I think we're just getting started on it. I think video's been like the thing that is now almost starting to get saturated. I think the market's getting filled with shows like mine, especially now that ever since LinkedIn put on videos. So, I think there's people have definitely caught on to that. So we're gonna have to move on to something next, and I think gaming is the thing. So, welcome, Erik, to our show.
Yes, thank you very much.
Good to have you. So, give me a sense. Can you give me a sense of I know the gaming industry is huge, but do you have a sense of how big it is?
Well, obviously you see it in everything that you do. You see it. Not only are the kids playing video games all the time, or adults, a lot of adults. The ages have been growing a lot over the years. Over the last 10 years, it's actually over the last 20 years, it's gone from tween all the way up to people in their 30s. So I guess you almost say it's part of the Gen X. But as far as how big it is, well, the industry itself, it made over $100 billion last year. And then there's esports, which is playing for money, sporting with the games, and that's close to 800 million. And then there's VR, there's AR, that's about 4 billion. I mean, the numbers are very high, but there's also, you got to remember, there's a lot of toes in the water. There's a lot of people that are involved in this and trying to make money. And you have to wonder how many of them really are. How many can you name name altogether if you were to do companies? If you were to really try, maybe even look around, you'd probably come up with 5, maybe 10 that are really doing it big. And part of that is going to be your marketing, right? Because it's in your face all the time. You turn on the TV and what are you going to watch? You're going to watch Battlefield 5 right now, right? Or maybe you're going to you haven't hit the new Call of Duty yet. So that's all over your face. But then there's the other people that that you know, but you don't see quite as much because maybe they're not advertising as much, but that everybody's playing. And that might be on your phone as opposed to on the PC or something that's going around. And where are they making their money? Well, they're making it different ways. I guess, we can talk about some of that too.
Yeah, let's get it. Yeah, and I forgot to mention that. So Erik, by the way, everybody, is one of the founding partners and lead programmers of Mission Critical Studios, one of the best studios for programming games, I think, at least in the United States, as far as I know. But why don't you tell me a little bit about what you guys do specifically?
Sure. Let's say right around, grow up playing games or whatever, like a lot of kids do. But around the year 2000, I started getting into the idea of modding games. Now, modding is taking a game that already exists and making some changes to it so that you can personalize it, perhaps. Back then, it was Half-Life or Quake or something like that. You could make new maps so that you could play more maps and play with your friends online and expand. So I started to do a bunch of that. And I really, really enjoyed it. I fell into it. It was like a major hobby for me. So I started to teach other people how to do it because there was a lot of people that didn't know how to do it. So I started filling out forum questions and realizing, hey, there's a lot of people with questions. So I started my own website and I started showing people how to do it and started creating videos on how to do it and expanding from there. And then came out I always liked the idea of the games and the PC games, but they are pretty overwhelming. The idea of these giant games that you would have to build, and to do that on your own, you need a studio, or you could, and it would take you forever, and you would never have time to work or eat or anything like that. So that's why mods were great. But then came the first iPod Touch, all right, and that was I think that was the end of 2007, or maybe somewhere in 2008. It was somewhere in there. And that iPod Touch opened up the world to, well, now you can turn around and you can make games that you can hold in your hand. This has such great potential. The market isn't full yet. Go for it. You can make these smaller things and perhaps do it with 2 people. And that's when I started making games and getting into the business. And that's
well, I grew up. I never was a gamer myself, to be honest. I never, as a kid growing up, I had friends who had their Nintendo stations, and I would always play when I was at their house. But I certainly didn't have one at my own home and didn't really become addicted. And I think I'm pretty glad that I didn't, because I have known a lot of people sort of my age who've wasted probably a lot of their lifetime,
Yeah,
just in front on the couch,
sure.
playing games. But I won't lie that now, exactly like you're talking about, now that there's games on the phone, like, those Clash of Clans games, Clash Royale games, I got pretty addicted to those. And it's a great little thing to do while you're,
Standing in line.
yeah, standing in line. And yeah, I know. So yeah, that market alone must be huge. So you guys are doing all of that, right? Like,
All of it.
all of it,
Yes.
and including what you mentioned earlier, like the VR, the virtual reality, and the Oculus things. Tell me a bit about that, because there's different things. I hear about how there's different versions of that, and I think there's a lot of confusion about that.
Different versions of VR and AR? Well,
yeah. Well, what's the difference between VR and AR?
Virtual reality. You are completely immersed in the virtual world. So you're talking about the Oculus, or you're talking about the HTC Vive or something like that, where the headset goes on, you see nothing else. You are completely immersed. So that is virtual reality. And now let's say you want to get into AR, augmented reality. Some people also refer to it as merged reality. Some people argue whether or not they're the same or different. Really, it is taking the real world and changing it or merging something in with it so that now you have overlays. A pretty good example, actually, Pokemon Go. All right, you're looking through your camera, and you see what's going on in the world,
right,
because it relates to the real world. Another option might be some movies, some sci-fi movies. If you ever watch some of those, especially the ones that have been popping up on Netflix lately, they're always showing some sort of world where you see these digital overlays, which seems very cool and is technically possible right now, but they
yeah.
But the technology is in this flux. It is so very, very new. So you have to say, well, where is the money coming from for this, or does it have a future? The money right now is coming from the people who want to fund, the investors. They say that there's not a lot of investment coming from the consumer yet, and that's the question is why. Well, is the consumer uncertain of what's going on? I personally think that it has to do with the cost of investment, because you're talking about having to purchase some sort of. Well, first thing you think of, I got to throw $1,000 at it. No, you could probably get into it for $600, but you also have to have the equipment around, and that is a lot of money, considering that you can go out there and buy an Xbox for half that, and then just start playing games. So why do I need this VR? Where's it going to go? Well, or is this still going to continue? I think it does have a great chance of continuing and growing. It's just going to be very, very slow. I think it has a better chance than your 3D TV, if you remember that. The 3D TV was the biggest hype, and nobody turned around and really, it didn't really soar. You don't go over to your friend's house to watch 3D TV or say, wow, this is great. You don't go out and buy these 3D movies. You're not watching at home with these glasses on. But what we did get some great technology out of it, faster refresh rates and on the TVs, which make them appear a little bit more lifelike. But what I see coming out of here is probably a lot of AR stuff. Since we already have the Pokemon Go and that took off very well, we'll see more strides in that arena. But it's also going to have to do with whatever people already have in their hand. They have their phones. They have some sort of technology already available, and they're going to start merging it in that. And until we have more technology that allows us to broaden that, we probably won't see a lot of growth. Maybe we'll see phones embedded in your eyeglasses or something like that. Now you suddenly have a world of AR where you can start overlaying images.
Yeah, well, that's where I think, I think there's just a huge, opportunity in the commercial market, right? Like, I can just imagine, like, manufacturers or people who have to diagnose machines or whatever, that they can actually kind of look through and have the machine kind of assist them with diagnosing the problem or help them. I don't know how, but
sure. I've worked on similar applications. The idea is you look at something and it has object recognition, and now you can start working that virtually as well. Perhaps you don't know how to build. You don't know how to fix something. You look at it, it's recognized, and all of a sudden your instructions are in front of you.
Yeah. What's going to happen when, like, this stuff becomes so good and that reality is so preferable to the crappy one that's outside in the real world that people just, like, lock this thing on and then never take it
those
off?
are your sci-fi movies. It's already been done in the movies. So, yeah, they say that society will degrade, right?
Right.
We're not at that point.
I never buy that stuff either.
No. But
it's fun to joke about, at least.
Yeah.
So for people like myself, for marketers, what do you kind of see as sort of the I don't know, opportunities for using gamification in marketing?
Well, gamification, is basically taking. It means the application of typical elements in gaming, to everyday things. It could be taking an advertisement and making it playable so that you click something, something happens. Maybe a little slot machine. That is the idea that you're referring to. I mean, I can take gamification much further and say it is the applied to schools. Kids want to learn, so why should they have to go home and say 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2? Why not play a game? And
Right.
now they're learning, but they're also doing it in an interactive way, and perhaps it's easier for them to learn. I mean, these studies still have to go forth, but and we can take it even further and start teaching children who have disabilities. Perhaps they can't learn the regular way; they need to learn a different way, or they need to learn something else. These things are all great ways to apply the gamification process. But as far as advertising goes, I think you already see the advertising games that are
Mhm.
going on, or you may see video games where regular video games, first-person shooters on your computer, or something else where they embed advertising into it, and that is sort of a gamification process of advertising. It
Mhm.
depends on who made the game, right? If Electronic Arts made the game, well, then it's just a game. And if Coca-Cola made the game, well, that's gamification. So what's the
Right.
difference?
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I see the side that you were talking about for sure with my kids. I know that they've already picking up new skills. My youngest one's learning how to spell right now
Hmm.
through games. My oldest one's learned all kinds of math tricks through that. And then on the marketing side, for sure, like I said, I know it's been around for a while. I've worked at agencies where we've done some little promotions where you can play a little game, score some points, and that
Hmm.
will have an impact on a discount that you can get, for
Hmm.
example. But I think it's just getting started, in my opinion. Like I
Yeah.
said, especially with the oversaturation of video that I think is coming, then people, marketers like myself will be looking to what's else,
What's next?
what can we grab people's attention with, and I think gamification is for sure there's still so much growth.
Except for the learning curve. That is perhaps the big holdback. You have to learn to use these tools that can produce on multiple platforms. Are you just
Mhm.
trying to make? You can't just make Flash, right? Because Flash is, well, that's done.
That's done.
So you need to do HTML5. Is that going to cover all your bases? It might not work on. Well,
Mhm.
it does work on Facebook, but maybe there are some platforms where that's not going to work out for you as well. So you have to come up with these game engines that allow you to develop without the huge learning curve, and because you're coming from and probably more of an artistic view. You're
Mhm.
used to making your advertisements, taking an image, throwing it in there, some text, and maybe making something move around. That's really all the art. Now we have to get into the programming or the interaction. What
Mhm.
happens when I click here? How do I make it do this whenever I click here? And so yeah, you're talking about how do you
Yeah.
do this right
Does
now?
everybody actually need to learn this, or do they just come to you and you guys, build it for them?
Exactly. So that's where we come in. We
Right.
can turn around. You can come to us and say, "I would like to do this. I'm just not sure if it's going to work out." Or, well, how about we build you a prototype? Something that is a representation. Maybe not the final product, but gives you the idea of how it works. Or maybe you do want to just go forth and say, "I want to build this and make this happen." So yeah,
Right.
that's where it comes into the whole interactivity. We do a lot of games or applications, anything that is interactive in a world of user interfaces.
Mhm.
Um, or perhaps you want to go on and just do a piece of it, which we would call a vertical slice. So there's different phases of development that we can do,
Mhm.
and there's different levels of prototyping.
Well, so what would be involved in prototyping, and let's say, I mean, if I had a very sort of simple idea for a game, what would that kind of run me? You know, and it's hard.
Costs
I
can,
know that's
well,
probably hard to say, but
it is hard to say without knowing
but
all
what's
what are they.
the entry point? Roughly speaking.
Again, it's. I have done things that cost perhaps $500, but I have done things that costs 100 times that. It all depends on what you're trying to get done. And it has to do with the amount of time that it takes to put it into it, and perhaps the complexity, which is not always noticeable right off the top. Whenever you come to us, we're going to ask you what you're looking for. And if you want to provide us this design, great. If you don't have a design, but you just have an idea, we can go from there too. We're talking about creating a draft of an outline of what you're looking for. We're talking about making a game design document, which outlines every bit of aspect, which helps the development process work much faster, because it's like looking at the manual. Here's the manual, here's how it works, let's put it together. Up to doing some wireframing, which is the idea of just placing elements, placeholders everywhere. A circle for here's where I want some images, a box, here's where I want a button, all the way up into a very blocked out type of prototype, which is just what it sounds like, putting blocks, interactive blocks, where everything is, perhaps if it is 3D, so it is just blocks, perhaps it is just 2D, so it is maybe hand-drawn sketches that shows how everything works all the way up into the final product. Do you have to do all these steps? No, it also, once again, depends on the complexity of what you're looking for. And if you turn around and say, I want one that works just like this game, but I want it to have these elements instead, which is actually becoming quite the turn right now for people producing games on the mobile device. Perhaps the biggest example would be Flappy Birds, right? That thing came out, then everybody had a copy of it. So I don't need to make a game design document and prototype and everything for it. I know how it works. Let's just change it and make that game.
Interesting.
Or maybe just change one little piece of it.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so if somebody like comes in there, like, I know I've got the great idea, but I just don't know how to monetize it. Is that something that you guys help people with as well?
Well, monetization is also a big key. How are you going to make money on the final product? There are several different ways to do it. If you're talking about mobile, the big deal on the mobile is to go freemium, which is basically produce a free app and somehow introduce money, advertising. Well, it could be advertising, it could be in-game advertising, it could be in-app purchases, which is purchasing some. When it comes to mobile, we're using that as an example. You want to purchase one set of items, which is like, let's say you're purchasing clothing for your avatar. Well, then you own those, so you make a one-time purchase. But perhaps you were playing a game like Flappy Bird, and suddenly you want this thing where you can just like fly crazy across the screen. But you want people to have to keep purchasing it because it's only good this one time. Make it a consumable. Or we can make it a DLC. If you want your Flappy Bird to be a Flappy Brick. I don't know why, but there. So let's allow the person to purchase a different type of element for the game, or a different level. And then, of course, the PC games are more prevalent with with premium type purchasing, which is you pay up front and maybe place the advertising in it. And the advertising can go all sorts of different ways. If you can do it very in your face, where you pop up, or you can throw it in the background of the game, however you're trying to do it. Or perhaps your whole thing is based on find the Coca-Cola can, and therefore that is the object of the game. Subliminally, it's your soul.
Well, this is what I mean exactly. This is where I think I see marketers using it. You know, like little scavenger hunt type games. You know, people through their phones just doing something like that. I've heard, actually, I did speak to somebody the other day who was doing something through Snapchat that was exactly that. It was like this little sort of scavenger hunt through a city. But yeah, I think and hearing you talk, I'm like, yeah, man, the options in the room for this to grow just seems like unlimited. It's already like a huge industry.
Sure. But you know, depending on how complex you want to get, some people want to remake World of Warcraft. That kind of game is going to look up what they spent on making that game. Try to determine, well, 80% of that was advertising. Okay, but that's still in the millions. That's a very involved game. It takes a lot of hours to put that kind of thing together, as opposed to Flappy Birds. Flappy Birds might only cost you a couple grand to put together, because you have to talk about not just a game, but you say, here's the intro, here's the main menu. How do I purchase things? Well, you have to go to the menu. I need to make that. I have to put those into the store. So there is time involved in what you don't immediately see. You have to look at everything else that puts it all together.
Amazing. So, you know, I guess, okay, so we kind of started to talk on this, but this is where I love to just like imagine, like, where do you see, what do you see as the future? You know, what are the new things that we haven't seen yet? What's coming on the horizon?
Probably, It's always tough to predict, because it's the one-hit wonders that that change the industry, and those things you can't always predict unless you are that hit. You say that's the one, but it's probably going to be cross-platform right now. The idea that you're able to play on mobile and on the PC and on the console. Well, actually, right now it's going to be all the consoles and the PC being able to play together. Fortnite, huge. Fortnite, I believe, is working on that or there is a big demand for Fortnite to make that feature available, so that no matter what platform you're on, you always get to play. The big obstacle is, can I beat you with my keyboard and mouse versus you on your controller? That has always been the problem. It's not getting them connected. It is making it a fair fight. And now you throw somebody from that onto the mobile. Can they compete? Well, it all depends on the game and whether or not you're making one game or you're making 3 different games that somehow work together. I know that EA and or Activision have worked on some of those in the past to a tie-in to their game, so that you can look at your phone and you can manage things. The idea, you can manage things on the bus, or you could look at your stats while you're in the game, so that you're adding to the game experience.
Well, you just reminded me of something that I saw, maybe it was probably almost maybe 2 years ago, when one of the new Star Wars movies came out, and then I think it was Google, and they had this interactive thing where you could use a lightsaber on your PC.
Yes.
And I was like paying, and I was like, this is the coolest thing.
Yes, there's a game on Steam available for that kind of thing, where you can play along with music, and you can go watch a video. It looks very cool to see. That's going to be your VR, completely submersed into that virtual world, but it looks very cool. Things coming at you, and you're using lightsabers.
Yeah. And man, this is exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, look, this has been really fascinating stuff. I really appreciate it. Again, everybody check out Mission Critical Studios. I know these guys are absolutely amazing at what they do.
We talk to people all the time who are just interested in games and not sure whether or not it's for them to pursue. Talk to us, and we're not asking for anything up front. We're just looking to have a conversation. And no, we're not trying to steal your idea. We'll sign that paper. We're happy to sign the paper and go on with it. We want to make games. We're not
NDAs. Yeah.
We're not stealing things here.
Right. Yeah. No. I know you guys are. You guys are good guys.
That's a big industry argument, whether or not people are out there trying to take your ideas, and it always has been. Back in the days, 10, 20 years ago, when big companies are making it, don't tell them your idea; they'll steal it.
Well, Tetris, right? With some guy in Russia who game, and then I don't know that he got anything out of it.
I don't know.
I don't think he did. I know it was like some guy in Russia invented the game, and then somebody else monetized it and made probably a fortune.
Well, there probably are thieves out there looking for you, but that's why we have all the papers up front to say, no, we're not trying to do that. Let's sign, and it's yours.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate it, having you on the show. It's been lots of fun.
All right. Thanks, Julian, very much.
I've got big balls. I've got big